Mark, you have started one of my favorite series that you've done. You've done several series for Arrowhead Report. I love them because I think they're going to be reoccurring series. And this one is, I didn't even think about this one being a reoccurring series. You can go find this article up on arrowheadreport.com right now. It's the second year jump series. And the Chiefs have some candidates this year for the second year jump that are very interesting. You kick it off, you don't mess around. You went right for the first one. Everyone's going to be wanting to know, what do we think about this guy? I've already gotten several tweets about this guy saying, hey, should I get him in fantasy this year? What's it going to be like? What's the Chiefs offense going to be? It's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And
Yeah.
you wrote about his second year jump, what you think about him. Now, I don't want you to necessarily spoil your article, I guess. You should go read it on arrowheadreport.com. We might touch all the bases on his article, but you should still go read it. Why did you choose to start with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I should say? Was it just because he was the first overall pick from last year's draft class?
Yeah, when I was going back through it, I was thinking like, all right, it's a little bit of downtime right now in Chiefs
Mm-hmm.
Kingdom. We were kind of talking about this off the air, but I was like, what can I do, to kind of get fans engaged and stuff like that? And I was thinking back to last summer, and I was like, I did that second year jump series about, I think it was late May, maybe early June. So I
Yeah.
was like, let's just do it again. And last year they didn't have a first round pick, so I just started with Juan Thornhill on that last year second year jump series. So I was like, yeah, let's just jump right in there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
And jump right in, you certainly did, because I mentioned this a little earlier, kind of when I was pitching your article. I've gotten tweets, texts, calls, voicemails from people about, hey, should I pick up Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year in fantasy? What's Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to do in fantasy? What do you think this offense is going to do? Does Jerick McKinnon signing have anything to do with Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Lots of questions going on about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I honestly have the same questions about
Yeah.
what I think is going to happen. So, Mark, in this second year jump series, I said earlier, one of my favorites, just because you're starting to look at all these guys in the sophomore slump. Is it a real thing? There's also the sophomore jump, like we're talking about here. What do you think about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and what do you think he can kind of add to this offense in his second season?
Yeah, man, I'll even jump into some fantasy talk if you want to right now, because
Yeah.
I've gotten those questions too. One of my buddies and lives in the Chicago area. He got him in a dynasty league last year. Even before
Hmm.
last year, he's like, "Hey, should I go for Clyde Edwards-Helaire?" He's like, "What do you think he'll be in the Chiefs offense?" So last year, I mean, he didn't have a bad season. He had 1,100 total yards. I think that was more than Damian Williams ever had in his career. So jumping off in his rookie season, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, people thought he was going to do more, so that's why it's
Yeah.
kind of a question. But yeah, I think he's going to have a nice jump. Right now, I think he's sitting around, as of a couple weeks ago when I checked, I think he was around like RB 21 or something crazy like that.
Oh my
Which
goodness.
I'm like, how is he falling that far in that? I think it was the Yahoo rankings when I was looking at it. And so yeah, I'm like, if he's the 21st running back, that is wow. That would be a steal if you can get him as the 21st running back, as far as I'm concerned. I think, this is me personally, I think he can get close to top 5 fantasy RB status this year.
Yeah.
Close to 2,000 yards total. I think he can get upwards of 12 total touchdowns, maybe 12 to 15 range. Last year he was kind of low on the touchdowns. It just depends on that red zone offense, which I
Hmm.
mentioned in the article. I think he's going to have a lot more options in the red zone this year with that revamped offensive line, which I think that's going to be a huge push for him this year. His yards per carry, I think, is going to jump up. And yeah, that offensive line, I think, is just it's gonna be something that we haven't seen from the Chiefs in a while. Which I know some people don't like to hear that because we have Patrick Mahomes. So why
Right.
do we need to run the ball when we have Patrick Mahomes? But there are times when you're going to need to run the ball and run it effectively, which is, I
Hmm.
think, the point of it. So if you can get Clyde Edwards-Helaire rushing for 60 yards a carry, that's just another bonus right there. So yeah, I think he's going to have a great second year jump. I think the stats are going to pop out at you a little bit more than they did in the rookie season. And in fantasy, I'm saying if you can get him in round 2, get him in round 2.
Looking at his stats here for last season, 181 attempts, 803 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground. You mentioned 1,100 scrimmage yards. He had 297 receiving yards on 36 receptions, 1 touchdown through the air. Um, I would say that's pretty effective in his rookie season. I know that's no slouch to get 1,100 scrimmage yards in your first season in the NFL. Now, he did miss 3 games. I think the average games missed in the NFL for running backs is like 2.6 or something like that. So it's not uncommon for running backs to miss up to 3 games, even more a year. Um, I just hope that he can stay healthy. That's, I think, my biggest concern with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just because he doesn't have like a checkered injury past like some of these guys do. He stayed healthy at LSU. It's just the injury that he got against the Saints was really super. It was just really awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked funny. It took a while to heal. Those ankle sprains are always weird. You brought up the offensive line. I think that's going to be really huge in how he plays. And I started mentioning this a long time ago when the Chiefs were rebuilding their offensive line. I said, hey, they really overhaul this offensive line, turn it into a solid offensive line. It's going to make the selection of Clyde Edwards-Helaire look even better. And I think that it has a real big opportunity to make him look good. And you mentioned running the football. Yeah, I'm one of those guys who doesn't like to run the football per se. I don't like them running it on 2nd and long or
Yeah.
2nd and 6 or anything like that. 1st and 10. I don't want to hear it like that. I want them to run the ball more effectively. And I think with a revamped offensive line with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they can really run the ball effectively there. And I think that's kind of the big thing that I'm looking for is his effectiveness. Listen, I think he's going to be a really big target in the passing game. There was that report, remember, just before the playoffs, that they were getting him involved in the passing game, and they were making him kind of a bigger piece in this passing game. I don't think we're ever going to see him split out. I know he did that a few times at LSU, but I don't know if that's what we're going to see with the way that what they were going to use them. But I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how they use him. Like I mentioned earlier, the Jerick McKinnon signing, I don't know if it impacts Clyde Edwards-Helaire usage all that much. Jerick McKinnon is essentially he basically fills the Darrell Williams role before Darrell Williams turned into Darrell Williams, if that makes sense.
Depth.
But right, depth, and he's a good pass blocker. So that's kind of what it comes down to. He's probably a 3rd down back, I'd guess. He just in a certain passing situation when you want another pass blocker in there, Jerick McKinnon will get the job done. And I like the signing of Jerick McKinnon. I don't think I've talked about this enough. I was talking about this with Jordan and Connor at the Royals game. I was saying, I don't know if we've even talked about this signing enough, because I think it's actually a kind of a big deal to this Chiefs offense to get Jerick McKinnon in there. His good pass blocking, his veteran experience. Not many guys come back after tweaking their ACL twice, and he was able to do it last year and put up some pretty decent numbers, not earth shattering or anything like that. But for as much as he's getting paid, it was some good numbers. And you brought up the fantasy. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was like 1st round guy last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was going top 10, I think, around like 8, 9. And I think that was just because, I mean, he was getting a lot of hype with, Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs offense as a whole. So I think it was maybe a little bit overblown last year. I think he could have had better numbers. He just wasn't getting as involved in the passing game, which I think you mentioned just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
I think he will get more involved in the passing game this year, which will increase his productivity as a fantasy player and for the Chiefs as a whole. And I think that it's just something that to look out for, because I think it was his last year at LSU. He had, I don't know the exact number, but I think it was between 65 and 70 receptions out of the backfield, which is an insane number when you consider, I think you said last year he had like 30 something for the Chiefs. So I think that's something that'll really pop up to around the 50 range, maybe 50 to 60 range. And I think he'll really get involved more in the passing game, which is only going to make the Chiefs more explosive and more dynamic and more tough to stop. It's going to be another headache for defensive coordinators, which when you already have Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Mecole Hardman, whoever else is going to come in and play for the Chiefs offense. It's going to be awesome to see.
So Clyde had 36 receptions out of the backfield last year. His junior season at LSU, which was his final season at LSU, he had 55 receptions out of the backfield. So still, what is that? He averaged 8.2 receiving yards per catch. So I mean, that's pretty solid. He has the potential to do it, right? We've seen on the tape that he has the potential to be involved in the passing game more. Brett Veach wants him involved in the passing game more. I don't know how much Brett Veach really has a say in it, but Brett Veach has said Andy Reid has said that they want to involve him more in the passing game. Listen, I think last season, I know that we bring this up a lot, but it being a pandemic year, like COVID off season was tough on these rookies,
Oh yeah.
especially trying to learn these NFL playbooks, jumping from college playbooks to an NFL playbook in an abbreviated offseason is kind of unfair, right?
Yeah.
Willie Gay the same way. The Spagnuolo system is very complex. Trying to expect Willie Gay to jump in immediately and play competently is kind of I don't know what word I'm looking for there. Kind of ignorant, maybe, and just ignoring the fact that he didn't have a whole offseason to prepare. But hopefully this season we get a training camp in St. Joe. That would be wonderful. I want to meet you guys. I want to talk to you guys. We will, if there's a training camp in St. Joe, hold me to this. We're going to do an RTK meetup there. We got to. We have to. If you guys can get to St. Joe, would love to do a little happy hour, I guess, in air quotes. But wherever you are, go out to training camp and then come meet at a restaurant and just meet and hang out. That will do it for today's podcast preview. If you enjoyed the preview, make sure to check out the full show out on your favorite podcast provider. Don't know how to find it? Go to smarturl.it/roughing. Got a splash page. You can find your favorite provider there and find the show there, or go into the search bar of your favorite show, type in Roughing the Kicker. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. It really helps us out. If you enjoy the channel and the podcast as a whole, subscribe and obviously get that notification bell on because you don't want to miss any more podcast previews. We'll be back with another video soon. So until then, I'll talk to you next time.